When I entered that hospital, I suppose the hospital personnel found me a very difficult patient, because I demanded to know everything that was happening to me. I demanded to know what my temperature was. And you will find that in many hospitals, the personnel think that your temperature is something they keep for themselves, but it's my body and my temperature, I would say. It's my blood pressure, it's my blood count, it's not yours. And I want to know, because I wanted to be with my doctors in a shared relationship with my treatment. Now, I suppose one of the turning points in my terrible experience trying to get into remission, that is to get the disease killed, all the cells dead in the bone marrow that were diseased, and also all the good cells, came when my dear, dear brother, who's 7 years older than I, and who is a physician himself, though not a hematologist, analogist, was sitting at my bedside talking to one of the residents about the treatment that was being administered to me. It was very experimental, and my brother could see the dreadful effects. My hair was gone, I was wasting away, and he thought I was asleep because he loves me dearly and would never have said this if he thought that I could hear him. He said, "I wonder," to this distinguished resident, "why are they doing this to my brother? It cannot possibly do anything but hasten his death and also destroy the quality of his life." And the resident agreed. I didn't act as if I were awake. I didn't rouse myself, but I roused a determination that I would prove them wrong, dead wrong. And I think from that moment on, there entered not only the ingredient of hope, but determination and anger, that somebody who was in charge of me and somebody who loved me thought I couldn't do it. Now, in the modern hospital, if you go to the scientific institution to be treated, and I hope you will find that they parse the body into all the relevant parts. I had, for example, a hematologist, a renologist for my kidneys, a hepatologist for my liver, which was being affected, a cardiologist for my heart, an internist for my general body, a chemotherapist to inject these dreadful chemicals, and also an oncologist, as I said, to be the generalist. And I even had a psychiatrist because I really required psychiatric support, and I was visited by a wonderful psychiatrist for 15 minutes a day just to talk over with me, and he too encouraged me to be infused with determination. I recall that my psychiatrist and I spent many hours discussing the fact that nobody knows the connection between the mind and the body, between the will to survive and the ability to conquer cancer. But I'm confident that when we know enough, we'll find something that in the mind triggers some kind of harmonic system, a system of the hormones, which has some effect on the body. We'll find it out, because the proof certainly is, as far as I'm concerned, in my survival today. Now, I've just said that the body has been now separated into all the specialties and subspecialties, and there are whole flocks of specialists hovering over me. And each of them wanted a blood sample. Each of them wanted his own or her own blood sample each day, and my veins were now beginning to collapse. I didn't have any more veins left. I felt they would soon have to turn and get the veins in my scalp, because the veins in my arms and the veins in my legs had given away. I'd been punctured so many times. So I think the day I really took charge was the day in which I assembled all of the physicians. And I said, "You know, you're all wonderful. And I know I owe my survival to you, and if I do win, I'll owe it to you. I acknowledge that. But I'm tired of you. I'm tired of your specialties. I'm tired of your subspecialties. I'm tired of your science. I want a doctor." And they agreed that I was entitled to a doctor. And I turned to them and I said, "My doctor is going to be," who happened to be a woman slightly younger than I, but a woman who I figured had become the clinical professor of medicine at this great medical school, not by virtue of her being a woman, but by virtue of her being better than almost anybody else of her class and of her specialty. And she became not only my doctor, my guardian, my saint. Oh, I can remember when she danced into the room one day, just danced, and said to me, oh, the megakaryocytes are back, the megakaryocytes are back. I didn't know what in the devil the karyocytes were, but they happened to be the precursors of normal blood cells that are expected to return if you do get into remission, which is the basic element that must occur before any cure. So she was telling me that there had been a reversal from the production of bad cells to the destruction of those cells, and now the recurrence of good cells. I, as I said, got extremely upset with my collapsing veins and the agony of being punctured by people, some of whom don't know how to do it as well as others. So finally I said one day, I want to tell you something. You're going to get one blood sample a day from me, just one. And you're all going to get together the night before, those who think I have an infection, those who want to count my blood, those who want to see what's happening to my kidneys, those who want to know the blood levels of cholesterol. You're going to get together, either the day before or the morning before I am let of blood. And you decide how much you need, and you divide the blood. But don't you come to me and ask for additional blood during the course of the day unless there's some emergency. It's once a day, and not only that, I'm not going to be punctured by these clumsy people anymore, nurses, aides, and nurses and young doctors who don't know where my veins are. I want the intravenous nurse teams to come. They are so skillful. They can puncture you and leave almost no evidence. And that was done. In order to retain muscle tone, I knew that muscle tone was important, and I also knew that it was necessary for me to have muscle tone when I got out of that hospital, because I was determined to move from that hospital over to Central Park, pick up a baseball glove, pick up a baseball, and start playing with that 11-year-old boy who was coming to see me every day with downcast eyes and spirits that I had to support because he thought I was going. So how do you exercise in a hospital in which your left arm is infused with a dreadful chemical that's dripping from a bottle, and your right arm has got intravenous fluids and antibiotics flowing in it, and the bottles are on 2 stands? Well, I got out of the bed. I didn't ask the nurses. I got a hold of the stands. I started charging down the halls, dragging those stands. I must have been the most curious sight in Mount Sinai Hospital. And soon they began to follow me to see that I didn't burst the bottles or break the needles or whatnot. But I was, I guess, the only person in the hospital, at least the only person I saw, who was determined to exercise every single day, and every day I did. I also found that in the modern hospital, if you have hope, and if you have determination, and if you're a take-charge person, and if you regard the treatment of yourself as a shared relationship between yourself and your doctors and healthcare personnel, and let me say that includes nurses, by all means nurses, if you are that kind of person, you are going to have to know the orders. For example, I was supposed to receive this primary drug called cytosine arabinoside for 7 days and 7 nights by continuous drip infusion in my left arm. Well, I knew that was the order. Now, I don't know whether it was necessary to get it for 7 days, but that's what the doctors ordered. At the end of the 5th day, somebody comes and starts removing the needle, and I say, why are you taking it away? They said, you've had all you're supposed to have. I said, like hell I have. Read your orders. And sure enough, they stuck the needle back in, and at the end of the next day, they took it out again. I said, now, wait a minute. The personnel said, well, you've had 7 days. I said, no, I've had 6. Can't you count? So they put it back in again. I found that it was absolutely necessary to enforce a prophylactic discipline lest I get infected. Bear in mind that the treatment of most forms of cancer by chemotherapy requires the suppression of the immune system. What happens is that these drugs kill the cells that fight disease. And therefore, you become very susceptible to any kind of floating infection. My doctors knew that and were very aware of it and posted signs up, "Do not touch this patient without washing your hands." But people would come in, they would start touching me, and I would say, "Get the hell away from me. Don't you dare touch me without washing your hands." And it is even in those respects that I think I participated in the treatment. It's interesting. I served later as the chairman of the President's Commission for the Study of the Ethical Problems of Medicine, appointed by President Carter, and this distinguished commission, composed of the greatest scientists and theologians involved in the field of the ethical principles of medicine, all found, and it has not been disputed, that when the patient is in a cooperative, hopeful relationship with the healthcare team, when that exists, less analgesics, or that is medicines to reduce pain, are required. You get out of the hospital quicker. The morbidity, that is the ill effects of treatment, are less, and mortality is less. So what I'm saying is not only something that is spiritually important, I think it has been proved to be medically significant, and it is not disputed. For example, I would never, ever have let a doctor, I don't care how distinguished he is, give me Laetrile. I would never have treated myself by vitamin C. Now why? Because there is no scientific basis for either of these remedies. On the other hand, I submitted to a new and untested form of immunotherapy which had never been used anywhere in the world except in Israel. It was imported in this country and used experimentally on me, and luckily it seems to have had a good effect. And it had a good effect because, though imported from Israel and used on me, it was so carefully monitored by the skillful immunotherapist and oncologist who took care of me, and who saw that at a certain stage in my treatment, that drug, while it had helped me substantially, was now beginning to have a reverse effect, and the treatment was stopped before it could do any harm. So when that happened to me, to show you the kind of patient that I was, and I hope you will be, I demanded to know, why are you stopping this treatment? Why? What are you taking this away from me for? I demanded to know. And they said, well, we think it's having an effect which is counter to that which was intended. But I insisted on having everything explained. You know, when I got out of the hospital and was writing for the Encyclopedia Britannica my experience in the course of the treatment and the disease, I asked that my medical records be brought to me, and they were brought to me by an administrator of the hospital. They were this thick, they were huge. And as she went through those records with me, I found out a lot of things about my treatment, but she said to me, this wonderful woman, she says, you know, Morris, when you were in that hospital, you were regarded as the worst patient we ever had. Now, she says, we are so proud of you. We regard you as one of the best patients we ever had. I hope that you'll be that kind of a patient, no matter what your disease is, because even though they'll be irritated that you want to participate and do not accept the patriarchal system, that is the system that the doctor knows best, in the final end, when they see that this is making you better and therefore doing what they are trying to do, and that you're assisting them, you'll find that they'll be your friend. And every one of these doctors, I think, is my personal, close, and dedicated friend. It didn't start out that way.